Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's your old coffin dodger back here again, and it is now the 3rd of October 2021, and I simply cannot believe that it's more than 2 months since my last podcast. I have been collecting material and there is no end to it, pages and pages of it, and I store it in Word documents, things that I would like to talk about, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to end up just talking about the more recent things that I took note of. If I were to catch up on everything I've written down or I've typed in since the last podcast, I would be doing nothing else but talking. Listen, I hope you are all well, those of you who tune in regularly, and welcome to any new listeners. I'd recommend new listeners to go right back to when I started podcasting. It's a kind of an evolutionary thing with me. I started podcasting in 2019 because certain things came to my attention or were really knocking at the door of my mind and telling me you really need to change from trivial reporting, as I had been doing up to then, to more in-depth investigation of our current affairs and what's going on in the world. So I created my channels and started podcasting. So you'd need to go back there a little bit to understand my mentality and my approach. I just start off today again by inserting a little piece that I inserted before in another podcast. It is Mr. Gates himself talking about the end of life. So let's listen to that first before I get cracking.
And a lack of willingness to say, is spending $1 million on that last 3 months of life for that patient, would it be better to see which ones actually have no benefit whatsoever? But that's called the death panel, and you're not supposed to have that discussion.
Well, now we see or hear what his mentality is about and from what perspective he is viewing society and world affairs. Most of us thought that he was a computer geek somewhere in America who woke up one morning with a brilliant idea and put something together in his garage to create Microsoft, and there he has been ever since, until now it has emerged that he has his finger in just about every business on this planet. He has his finger in prison system. He has his money invested in the pharma industry. He has his money invested in farming, in Monsanto, in just about everything. You name it, he is involved in it. William Gates, also known as Bill, comes from a family of eugenicists. And the science of eugenics is that of ending life, of destroying life. Even the fact that he is involved in GMO products, which often end up without seed. They create new lines of fruit and vegetables and grain that has no seed. In other words, they are sterilized, that you cannot gather the seed from. And so a new crop, you have to go right back again to Monsanto and purchase some more seed that they already have modified again for your next crop. So that way they have destroyed life as well. They've also destroyed the life of the bees, who seem to be, when they get anywhere near a crop of grain that is genetically modified, they just drop dead from it. From even being near it. I don't know what the science behind that is, but a bee is a very wise little creature and it recognizes natural and can differentiate. There probably no pollen I think that's the whole thing. And there's no nectar, no pollen, no nothing. It's just a something to fill people's tummies with, but it has no nutritional value and no value to anything. So that alone points and is evidence that he is involved in destroying life, and more than trying to conserve life and to prolong life, comparing the worthiness of life and putting it in terms of productivity and usefulness, kind of a Nazi style of thinking. If you're not useful, well, then you shouldn't really be alive, and you shouldn't be draining the rest of society by being provided for. That would be putting it very bluntly, but it does describe more or less what these people are involved in. And what you heard there was just an excerpt from a little bit longer interview where he talks about prolonging life. The last 3 months of life was something like depriving the American people of 3 teachers. Each life that was prolonged, or that would be prolonged for 3 months, would be depriving the schools of 3 teachers. So he kind of turned it around and suggesting that by you living longer and using the medical system, that you're just not worth it, and a death panel should be getting together and considering how to bump you off. Okay. I can see some of you rolling your eyes and saying, why on earth is she bringing this up again? We know all that. Tell us something new. Well, I haven't an awful lot new to tell you, but maybe there are some new listeners who need to catch up on what we're all talking about. And for that reason, I was delighted to come across an article that I had posted on Facebook in 2013, all about Agenda 21. And I'm going to read from that now, because it is another one of these looking back to see the now moments. I remember well back in 2013, I think it was as well, when I was just becoming aware of chemtrails and geoengineering, and what most of us started out with, watching a YouTube video with an Australian MP called Ann Bressington. And she made a fantastic speech about what was ahead. And she was quoting what the Club of Rome had planned. So a lot of us, or some of us, have been very, very much aware of what was happening and could tell the signs as they were inserted into society. We could tell them straight away that this was from the think tanks of the Club of Rome, and of course other ones joined them as well. And the aims, of course, of Agenda 21 that we see unfolding right now is power and control, for one. They want to eliminate unalienable rights, which are individual rights granted by God and can never be taken away unless you live under government control in a sustainable development. And just to substantiate that, what Ann Bressington said, what is written there that I'm just after quoting, I have a voice piece that I captured and I'm going to insert by a ex-Prime Minister of Malaysia. His name is Mohamad, and this was recorded on March the 9th, 2015, where he speaks about the One World Government agenda, which is in full operation right now. He does not say human beings will be replaced by transhumans, but we know this is the real agenda. Well, he may not have said about the transhumanism back then. He might not even have known about it, because they weren't talking that much about the fourth industrial revolution back then. It's only since last year that it has been emerging through the World Economic Forum. And after this, I will insert another little piece where we can hear Klaus Schwab actually confirming that humans will no longer be human. So listen in, folks. Stay with me. I don't know who to give credit to at this stage, but it is a very relevant piece because it is history and a prophecy which is now unfolding.
Dr. Mahathir said globalization and borderless trade are being used to establish a one-world government.
Basically, it is about having a world government. We should abolish all states, all nations, all borders, but instead have only one world government. And that world government is to be by certain people, elites, people who are very rich, very intelligent, very powerful in many ways. They are the ones who will govern the world. There was not much talk about democracy or choice of leaders. Instead, there was to be a government by these elites who will impose their rules on everyone in this world. And for those who are unwilling to submit to them, there will be punishment. And the peace that we will get from this is the peace of the graveyard. Because the intention also is to reduce the number of people in this world. At the time when the New World Order was enunciated, the population of this world was only 3 billion. The intention was to reduce it to 1 billion. Now the population of the world is 7 billion. There will be a need to kill many billions of people or to starve them to death or to prevent them from giving birth in order to reduce the population.
Apparently, this president of Malaysia, he announced this after attending a TPPA meeting, Trans-Pacific Partnership meeting, and these were the results that he brought home with him. I wonder how Malaysia is doing now. Now, let us listen to Klaus Schwab, who is the Oberbefehlshaber of the World Economic Forum, World Wirtschaftsforum, what he has to say about technology and what is implicated between the lines of what he is saying. We will hear something about transhumanism, but the word itself won't be mentioned. Oh, did you know that Klaus Schwab is also a Rothschild? He is a descendant of that bloodline. So there you have it again. They're everywhere. Tentacles everywhere.
Talk about technology and how the ways it can be deployed, that contribute to growth rather than exacerbate unemployment. How will that implement itself?
It's a big question mark because there is a fear that technology, robots, just to take one,
you gain productivity from machines.
Exactly, and it replaces maybe the workforce or jobs faster than we can replace them with new jobs. Not everybody can be a robot polisher and so on, so there will be new jobs implications, and we have to be prepared for it.
Now listen to this bit very, very carefully.
The difference of this fourth industrial revolution is it doesn't change what you are doing. It changes you. If you take genetic editing, just as an example, it's you who are changed. And of course this has a big impact on your identity.
And offers certain kinds of possibilities that have to be careful about. When you began to do that kind of gene editing, some people worry that you are changing what it means to be human. You are changing what it means to be human. You are changing what it means to be human.
That's the problem. Of course, The new Industrial Revolution offers us many opportunities.
And he caused all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads.
Does that mean genetic editing?
And that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666.
We just heard mention there of the number of the beast, the 666, and the mark of the beast. And because I am always interested in numbers, and I have mentioned numbers and coincidences several times on many of my podcasts, I decided I would look and see what number I could come up with for the World Economic Forum. And there's a website where you can put in an expression or a name and see what number comes out. So the number that came out for the World Economic Forum was 1,610 in Jewish gematria, or in the English gematria would be 1,332, or simple gematria would be 222. That in itself is uninteresting, but the interesting thing is that the 1,610 number has other things in common with it, and other expressions like who is the Antichrist, or 666. Jupiter and Saturn is 1,610. Where is my mind is also 1,610. Let's see if there's another interesting one. With all due respect, 1,610. So this number is interesting, but it's not 666. But it's just my play with numbers every now and then. Oh, and in case you are wondering why I named this podcast Snakes, Scorpions and Survival, I'll come to that now, because recently I came across something about scorpions on, I think it was on Telegram, and they were talking about the symptoms of a scorpion sting or a bite. So I'm going to read out these symptoms now. Symptoms related to widespread effects of venom can include breathing difficulties, muscle thrashing or twitching, unusual movements of the neck, head and eyes, dribbling or drooling, sweating, nausea, vomiting, and high blood pressure. With high blood pressure, I would be thinking of heart failure. Maybe myocarditis would come to mind. I don't know if that causes high blood pressure, but it's heart related. You see, when I looked at these symptoms, I thought, where did I see them before? Now, the general population won't have seen anything about these symptoms, and they won't have seen the vaccination, the jab symptoms. They won't have seen these. They won't have seen the poor men and women and children, more recently children. They won't have seen them twitching, their muscle spasms, the unusual movements of the neck, head and eyes, and that many people are suffering from vision impairments or blindness. They won't know about the breathing difficulties caused by the jab and other things. And the reason they don't know about them, about these horrible symptoms and deaths, is because your government and the one world government doesn't want you to know. Mainstream media is keeping this a secret. I don't know about the nausea and vomiting. I haven't heard too much about that. But I found it remarkable that the symptoms related to widespread effects of venom can include these symptoms. And why I even was interested in the topic was that when this pandemic was declared last year, I remember after the first few days of concern, I remember thinking to myself, but didn't Jesus himself tell his followers that they would be able to walk over snakes and scorpions? He said that in one of the Gospels. I'm not sure now which Gospel it is, but you can Google it, find out for yourself. But he did say it, and I remembered that. And I also remembered that he had no fear of touching lepers, who at that time would have been segregated. They would never ever have been allowed to live within the community once this disease had been diagnosed or established. Nobody would go near them. Nobody would touch them, because back then one assumed that just coming near them would cause one to get it themselves. We know now that leprosy it's not that contagious. It is contagious if you're carrying somebody around all the time. If you are working with them for decades without looking after yourself, you may end up getting leprosy yourself. But there are very good treatments for that now and very good preventatives. That has all been learned in the meantime. But back then, Jesus had no fear whatsoever of touching lepers, and he said you will be able to walk over snakes and scorpions. And also in the Old Testament, if you remember, there were people bitten by snakes, and snake venom has much the same symptoms. I'm going to look at that now, snake bite. Will it come up? Okay, so a snake bite can be confirmed by puncture marks at the wound, redness, swelling, bruising, bleeding, or blistering around the bite, severe pain and tenderness at the site of the bite, nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea, laboured breathing. In extreme cases, breathing may stop altogether, and a rapid heart rate again, weak pulse, and low blood pressure. Whereas with the scorpion, it was high blood pressure and disturbed vision. So there we have the snake bite that happened to the Israelites in the desert. When they were traveling with Moses along the desert, they got really annoyed at him and at God for taking them out so far into the desert where they were totally relying on God for their daily and hourly needs. So they got cross at him and at Moses, and they were given out to him. So for that reason, God sent along some snakes to bite them. And they were obviously showing and displaying these symptoms that I'm just after reading out, the puncture marks and the nausea and the vomiting and etc. So God commanded Moses to put a snake, a bronze snake, on his staff, and to hold that up in front of the people, and whoever looked at it didn't die of his wounds and didn't die of his injury. So these things came to mind recently, especially the part about we're able to walk over snakes and scorpions. And I was wondering at the time back then how even friends of mine shied away from me. They wouldn't touch me. They wouldn't shake hands with me. And God forbid they wouldn't hug me because they were afraid. And so because of that, then I kind of listened up when I came across the scorpion bit here, the symptoms, the breathing difficulties. And we have heard that people with the COVID, and I'm saying that now with the inverted comma thing, the COVID causes breathing difficulties and pneumonia, probably, and maybe some of the complications that go with pneumonia. So for that reason as well, I found it interesting to remember that God said we can walk over snakes and scorpions if we put our trust in Him, if we keep our eyes on Him, like the people in the desert, the Israelites, were required or were asked to look up at the snake, the bronze snake, that they would be healed. So it's all a matter of faith. Do you believe in Jesus Christ? That is the question of the day. And right now I'm going to insert another little piece, what a priest of God, inspired by the Holy Spirit, has to say about what's going on right now. So let's listen to that.
The devil is overplaying his hand. What I mean by that is he's making himself more and more obvious in his activities in government, in his activities in the technocracy, in education, in the entertainment industry, and in culture, in the culture at large. I even believe, you don't have to believe this, but I believe it, that there's a demonic dimension to the pandemic. You know why I say that? Because I look at the fruit of the pandemic in the lives of people in our country and around the world. What is the most obvious fruit of the pandemic? I don't mean the people who get sick and die. What I'm talking about is something more widespread than that. There are many, many more people than those who get sick and die who are gripped with what? Fear, right? And fear is one of the primary strategies and tactics of the evil one, trying to keep people in fear, which is the antithesis of faith.
Agenda 21 uses the environment as bait and works to indoctrinate and prepare your children to live under global rule while you pay the bill. That was said in 2013, and I have said it many times in connection with the rights of the child referendum, because to me it was so obvious that it was all about state control, gaining control over the children under the pretext of caring for them, whereby the parents would have no more rights except the right to feed their children and to clothe them and to pay for their schooling, well, to pay for their indoctrination. So that's exactly what is happening. And that's a quote here from the article, and in brackets is the word vaccinations. This was 2013, remember? Use government and NGO, non-government agencies, to take over communities by starting locally. And we now know that globalism has its finger in county councils. They have already infiltrated our local authorities, which is probably why they abolished town councils, so they would become a little more impersonal. And they have their agents within the county councils who work hard to bring about these changes. I think they now call them change agents. It also aims to make truth irrelevant by changing history and science, it says here. And it also says something about creating new heroes. The Thunberg lassie comes to mind there, a new hero. I mean, it got to a stage when that one appeared that the priests, in their homilies, they were lauding her. They were saying how this little girl was going to turn the world around and it was going to be a new hero for young people, and how to live absolutely bonkers. Like they were whole homilies without even one mention of Jesus Christ. Then they will go ahead by influencing education to dumb down the children, teach concept, not facts, common sense or logic, demonize founders, constitution, and God. We see that happening right in front of our eyes. Then they go on to talk about equity, international redistribution of wealth, to create class warfare, to promote racism and divide and conquer, or to divide and conquer, to depopulate the earth, especially eliminating the weak, and control, of course, the media that will dictate then the agenda. And the aims, of course, of Agenda 21 that we see unfolding right now is power and control, for one. I think I said that earlier, but I'll repeat it again anyway. They want to eliminate unalienable rights, which are individual rights granted by God and can never be taken away unless you live under government control in a sustainable development. And with regard to Klaus Schwab and his transhumanism and the fourth industrial revolution, not to forget the sixth event of mass extinction. The World Economic Forum speaks regularly about that as well. And I always point out that the mass extinction, there must have been 5 previous events of mass extinction, but nobody has ever really told me how they came about. But when I look at what is happening now, that lives are deliberately being destroyed, I would somehow imagine that the 5 previous events were also deliberate. You see, they always rewrite history. And so this phase of history, the 21st century and the years that we have now and the decade that is in it now, it will be described as natural evolution at some stage in the future. If there are still any survivors that can think for themselves, they will be told that this was a natural extinction event, which it is not. There is already a society in existence with their own website in Australia, and it's called Transhumanism Australia, and it's a community of technologists. We educate and invest in scientific research and technologies that enhance the human condition. The transhumanism movement aims to accelerate 3 areas that will allow us to transcend the limitations of our human biology: super longevity, super intelligence, and super well-being. Not a word about super love qualities, being able to love more than one is loved. So now you see where and how the harsh lockdowns came about in Australia, because they are much further advanced in this plan than we are. They have already these smart cities and a lot of surveillance. So they are really pressing ahead with that. And first we look at China, then we look at Australia, and I'm not sure who to look at after that. I will attach this website as well. It allows you to meet with a community of like-minded people, transhumanists, of course, or I want to see the latest transhumanism videos. I must look at that one myself. But I'll attach the website anyway, because that is the direction we are headed. Oh yes, I see here now that this website is sponsored by Pfizer, Moderna, Volpara. I haven't heard of those before. These are health technologies, and some other, and ginkgo bioworks. Oh goodness, I was just looking at ginkgo today as a remedy for something. Yeah, but Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna are involved in this transhumanism business. Ooh. So I'm going to finish off now by inserting a little piece here where somebody was trying to get in touch with Pfizer headquarters, looking for information probably, and got an interesting automated response. I'd advise you to listen to it because it tells us that it is still an experiment and we do not need to adhere to any recommendations or any threats that we may be put under. I'd also encourage you to research a little bit more about Australia and who actually owns Australia. Australia is no longer part of the Commonwealth as we know it. It's a corporation and it is owned by entities who are shaping the present and the future of that country.
Thank you for calling the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 Vaccine Customer Service Center. This call may be monitored for quality assurance.
I'll listen to what they say.
The Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine has not been approved or licensed by the U.S. FDA, but has been authorized for emergency use to prevent COVID-19 in individuals 16 and older. See conditions of use at www.cvdvaccine.com.
But before I go, I want to bring you up to date with some very interesting things that I have found, which I haven't seen on Facebook or on Twitter so far. And one of them is that a huge new city, a New World Order city, is under construction in a place called Astana in Kazakhstan. And Astana is the capital city of Kazakhstan. And there are buildings there that are reminiscent of just about everything we have heard and seen of the New World Order. Denver Airport comes to mind there. And the main building that most people are talking about now is dedicated to the sun god. So we're going back to goodness knows where. We are being stripped of our Christianity, and the New World Order will, I suppose, have different gods. One of them will be, if you just see the name of the city, the first thing that pops into your mind is, well, if I do a little juggling there with the Astana word, you will have Satan. The word Satan comes up it kind of jumps out at you anyway. But there's this huge new city. I also want to bring you up to date with the progress that the new complex in the United Arab Emirates, the Abrahamic family complex that is being built there and which the Pope is promoting and is behind it as well. There's a complex with 3 religions. That is the Jewish Talmudic side of it. And then there's the Islamic part, and one part will be something like Christian, Catholic, I don't know. I think they're not going to pay much heed more to the risen Christ, only Jesus as a prophet. And that building, I was going to try and find something I saw recently. It's the progress that has been made. I did a podcast on it in May of 2020. So there's a picture on there of the architect's projection of what it's going to look like, but it is making good progress and will be opening in 2022. Also, I don't know how many of you have heard that a new church has been installed or opened in Berlin, also with these same 3 religions. and it will of course then be open to everybody else as well. And many of us who have been looking at this progress, we know that this is a part of the one world religion, and we have also a suspicion that it will take us back to Noahide laws, because both Talmud and the Quran are compatible in just about everything. They like to chop off hands and feet and heads when people do wrong. So instead of Jesus Christ, we will have these Noahide laws. That's why they have so many guillotines stashed away in America, I think, as well. So that is really the most astounding thing for me, was this city in Kazakhstan. It is absolutely flabbergasting. Huge buildings, modern, all reminiscent of Freemasonry. You can see the pillars left and right of entrances, and they represent, of course, the Yachin and Boaz, I think, are the names of the people that they remind us of. All these gods are contained in this city. I don't know if you'll be able to open it. I have already it open here, so I'll be able to post the link, and hopefully you'll be able to open these links too. So I shall love you and leave you now, and do loads of research of your own. And it would be interesting if there's somebody out there that can look at Kazakhstan, Astana, that's the capital of Kazakhstan. Look at that, then look at the United Arab Emirates and Berlin, and see what kind of a shape comes out of their geometrical shapes, because often these places are aligned along a timeline or a line of goodness knows what evil, where they're kind of joined up, and in between they're not exactly blessed, the areas either. So yeah, that'll be something somebody could do for me that's interested in that kind of research. So I will love you and leave you, and do look after yourselves and look out for one another. And I would really like if people would stop bitching at each other and trying to find fault with one another. We're all humans, and we're all fragile, and we're all trying to get behind what is happening to us. And I think all of the movement now in Ireland is collapsing, the movement against the New World Order. And I think, to me, it all boils down to the fact that most people are looking for a leader. They fail to be able to lead themselves, to stand on their own 2 feet, and to act as sovereign beings, and as we say, assigned by God. We're looking for leaders. Here's a leader and there's a leader, and this one is good and that one is not good, and don't follow him, and he's a shill and she's a plant. So it's all collapsing now, and I want to encourage you just to be strong in yourself. Everyone listening to this, be strong, be your own leader. You know, the only leader we have on which we can depend in any way at all is Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit. Otherwise, we will be completely lost. Because remember when the apostles were and the disciples were bickering among each other, they were saying, well, I'm going to follow Paul, and I prefer Cephas, and he's better than him. So they were even divided as well, because they weren't looking at their leader, at Jesus Christ, the only leader that can lead us out of the desert, that can lead us out of captivity, through the desert, to a new life in Jesus Christ. So bye-bye for now. God bless you all.